guys, and welcome back to my channel. I figured this week I would sit down and do a birth story on my 9-month-old son, Emry. Back in 2019 when Emry was born, Karsten and I weren't actively vlogging at that time. We didn't take enough footage while I was in labor and when I had him to really put together an actual birth vlog. So as I'm telling the story, I'm gonna just incorporate those clips of when he was born while I was in labor and the first, I think, day after. To begin, kind of to preface me going into labor, Emry was breech at 35 weeks, then he was transverse at 36 and 37 weeks. So he was sideways. When he was transverse at 37 weeks, I talked to my OB. We were sitting there weighing our options, and my doctor said, well, Kirsten, he is just plain getting too big to be able to flip again. He'll stay transverse through the rest of the pregnancy, which, ouch, if you've ever been through that. Oh my gosh, your child is laying sideways in your stomach, so you've just got two big bulges coming out your side. But anyways, so my doctor was like, yeah, it's probably gonna be a C-section, so we'll just get it scheduled. We scheduled my C-section for 2 Mondays after, and it was at 39 weeks on the dot. My doctor was holding out hope that I wouldn't have to have a C-section. So my doctor was like, come in and have an ultrasound at 38 weeks to see kind of what Emry was doing in there. I'm sitting there going, nah, there is absolutely no way this kid has flipped to head down. Absolutely no way. The ultrasound tech was like, yeah, he's back head down. And I was like, what? At my specific OBGYN, you go into your ultrasound separate, and then you go in and meet with your doctor afterwards. We are sitting there and my OB comes in. It's like, okay, Kirsten, here's your paperwork. Here's your C-section paperwork. Get here at this time, blah, 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 blah. Karsten's like, well, the baby's head down. Word for word, my OB looks at me and goes, no, both just laughing yeah, this kid is giving us a run for our money. My doctor is like, well, toss those out of the way, and we just kind of wait and see for labor. I'm excited at this point because I did not want a C-section. I really wanted to have, keep it as natural as possible. Sunday, the night before I turned 39 weeks, my husband and I are spending time at my mom's house, floating around in her pool. I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, Karsten, what if this kid flips back, breech, or transverse? He's already done it once. What if he does it again? Karsten's like, no, it'll be fine. And I'm sitting there going, we have got to get him out now. But we looked up, and I know I'm gonna get a bunch of people coming at me. We looked up the ingredients for the midwife's brew, and we were gonna do it. Went to the store, got everything for the midwife's brew, and I wanted to take it that night, but my husband said, no, don't take it yet. I gotta go into work, because the next day was Monday. He said, I gotta go into work tomorrow and do some things, so if you're gonna take it, please take it at 9 a.m. Monday morning, and then we'll see what happens. And mind you, I had been having Braxton Hicks contractions for basically my whole pregnancy. At 34 weeks, I ended up in labor and delivery for contractions. They were just really painful Braxton Hicks. Monday morning rolls around, and I'm sitting there. I specifically remember I'm switching laundry. I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, well that hurt. And I'm like, okay, well, and then I keep going on with my day, and Karsten hadn't left for work yet. I am just going about my business, and then it's like, well, there's another one, and another one, and another one. This was over a span of an hour and a half. And at this point, they were probably 5 to 7 minutes apart, my contractions. And so I look at Karsten and I'm like, yeah, you're not going to work today. I know this is it. This is happening. And he's like, okay. So then my mom was planning on being in the room with me, so I called my mom. She came and we walked our neighborhood for a while, and my contractions were 3 to 5 minutes apart. We called my OB and he said, yep, just go get checked. In all honesty, the minute I got in the car, my contractions stopped, or I had maybe one, but they didn't hurt as bad. So I'm thinking great, this is another false alarm. I'm just that, first time mom that's like, ooh, I'm in labor. They're like, all right, let's get you in a gown, let's get you checked and start monitoring you. Labor and delivery nurse, the admitting nurse, was not very nice to me. I didn't like her. She was sitting there typing on her computer, and she goes, on a scale of 1 to 10, Kirsten, what's your pain level? So I said, maybe a 2 or a 3. I kid you not, she's sitting there on her computer and she turns around and she looks at me and she goes, word for word, honey, we're gonna need 8s and 9s for you to actually be in labor. And at this point, I'm like, excuse me? And so I look at Carson and I'm like, I don't like her. Like, I whispered it to him. And I was like, who are you to say that my pain is not the admitting OBGYN comes in to measure me to see if I'm dilating or anything. She goes, oh, yep, she's at a 5. All of a sudden, that admitting nurse that was like being sassy with me was like, oh, nice as a peach. It was like, oh, this is so great. Like, you're in labor, baby day, yay. And I'm like, uh-huh. So then they get us admitted and stuff, and we go into the room. Our nurses there were amazing, so nice. One specific thing I remember is we're sitting there and I'm just having contractions like probably every 2 to 3 minutes, and I've got all those monitors on me and stuff. I remember like looking at Carson and being like, my water broke. Like, my water just broke. He's like, okay, okay, okay. So they take me into the bathroom to check because I had pads on and stuff just in case at this point. The nurse comes in and she's all like, look, and she goes, Kirsten, you just peed. And I was like, oh, interesting. So my contractions were so bad that they just like made me basically pee my pants. So that was fun. The nurse, my labor and delivery nurse, was basically like, okay, yep, you're having contractions every 2 to 3 minutes. Just keep in mind that when you pull the trigger and you say, I am ready for an epidural, it'll probably be like a half an hour before your epidural gets here. That is 10 plus of these contractions. So keep that in mind when you decide on an epidural. And I was like, oh, okay. So then probably an hour or 2 goes by. Then this one contraction hit and I looked at Karsten and involuntarily a tear came out of my eye and it hurt so bad. And so I was like, yep, Karsten, that's it. Like, let's get this going.
So sometimes in the epidural position, you can pick up your heart rate and think it's babies. Yeah, they're much more
The anesthesiologist comes, gives me my epidural, which I was terrified for, and it wasn't that bad, in all honesty. It wasn't that bad at all. So then once the epidural kicked in, I was like good to go. I was fine. Every nurse and doctor that came in to check me, check my progress and stuff, said that I had one of the best epidurals they had seen. I couldn't feel my whole stomach, and I couldn't feel down to like mid-thigh area, but I could feel everything else. Like I could feel my feet, I could feel my toes. I wasn't just like a limp fish on the bed. I kept dilating, and then I hit a 9 and I stopped. Like everything stopped. So they started putting me in different positions with one of those blow up peanuts, kind of push Emry's head onto my cervix to make it dilate the rest of the way.
Ready to meet your son?
Probably like 7 o'clock at this point. They decided to start up some Pitocin. I remember like the contractions, like when you have an epidural, you can't feel the pain, but you can feel when a contraction happens. And I remember just the pressure was building up and building up and building up. Well, all of a sudden, every time I would have a contraction, Emry's heart rate would drop. And my contractions were coming like one over the other. The nurse actually had to press a button, and a bunch of nurses came in. She had me on my hands and knees with a oxygen mask on, because every time I was on my hands and knees, his heart rate would go back up. So she called all of these nurses in. Doesn't tell us what's going on because she doesn't want us to freak out. She calls all of these nurses and they come running into our room. She's like sitting there going, I gotta stop this, I gotta stop this. I'm thinking like this is it, going in for a emergency C-section, because this is like the 4th time that they've had to put me on all fours and put the oxygen mask on my face.
Hey, hanging in there, champ. As expected. Now 9:30, still 9-10 centimeters dilated, and
I remember The pain with the Pitocin was so bad that I could feel the contractions up past where my epidural was. So I could feel the contractions like up into my chest to the point where it felt like I couldn't breathe. And I threw up because the pain plus the adrenaline of being, you know, having a baby. So she gave me what, she just called it a shot, and she just like put the shot in my arm. It made the Pitocin like completely leave my body. So my own contractions were kind of still doing their thing. They're about every 3 minutes. Then it's like almost midnight at this point. My doctor comes in, he decides to check me again, and I'm at like, he called it 9 3/4. Like I still wasn't quite there yet. There was still a tiny part of my cervix that was just being stubborn as heck. He kind of like sat there weighing his options, and he's like, you know what, Kirsten, you're just gonna push. You're just gonna do this. So then 1 a.m. rolls around and they said, okay, time to start pushing. He was here in 5 pushes. I would push and then his head would go back in, and I would push and then his head would go back in. And it was because his umbilical cord was wrapped up and around his shoulder. It was doing a few things. It was keeping him from fully engaging, so then my cervix wasn't dilating all the way. That was the reason why his heart rate kept dropping, because his shoulder would put pressure and actually clamp the umbilical cord. It made it hard for me to actually push him out because he kept like going back in. So my OB had to actually like take his finger and reach underneath the umbilical cord and unwrap him, and then he was here. Oh my gosh, that was the best moment of my entire life. I cried, Karsten cried, my mom was crying, we were all crying, and then I got to breastfeed him for the first time. So he was born on July 23rd at 1:16 in the morning, weighing 7 pounds, 2 ounces, and 20 inches long.
Thanks after Mom. We're back, baby. My kids absolutely like just cried and screamed the entire time.
Really?
So
Oh, man.
I wish my kids had been like this. Of course, they love it now. They don't want to get out of the bathroom now.
Exactly. Well, just like we're first, it's great now and terrible later.
Funniest part, the most ironic part about Emry's entire birth story is that I had him on the same day that I was threatening to take the midwife's brew, and it was supposed to be my scheduled C-section. If you need a little bit of something to believe in some fate, then there you have it. Yeah, so now he is a happy and healthy 9-month-old little guy. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.